So yesterday, in what should have been a happy day, it was Valentine's Day. I'm just a few days back from a winter vacation in the sun, and although it was cold outside, the sun was shining and the skies were blue, but I was triggered by a conversation that left me curled up on the floor. You know, my heart was beating fast, I was sweating, my head was rushing with so many thoughts, and I had this feeling that I couldn't breathe. The world was literally compressing me from every angle. And I was completely overwhelmed by the emotion of fear to the point where my eyes just glazed over and everything was a blur. Now, sadly, this is an experience I know all too well when I suffer from an anxiety attack. But thankfully, I have a number of different methods to help me cope in situations. And today I would like to share one of these with you. Hey, I'm Greg. Thanks for joining me for this video. If you're new to the channel, several years ago, I had a burnout that literally turned my world upside down. The burnout not only induced terrifying anxiety and depression, but brought forth PTSD symptoms from an event that I had been blocking out of my mind in many years. And somehow through all of this, to help me understand what was going on, I started making videos about my experience. It was a way to not only sort of share my experience, but to hear from other people who understood what I was going through. And along the way, I've built an incredible supportive community right here on YouTube. So if this sounds like it's something of interest to you, then please do hit the subscribe button and click on that bell for future updates. Hopefully these videos can not only support you and your situation, but by sharing your experiences, you can help support others. But back to yesterday, I guess it's been about 4 months since I had my last attack of anxiety, but this was the worst I've had in over a year. It happened so quick. It was about 45 minutes in before I even realized I was, or became aware I was in the situation. And it was just so crippling and intense and I guess frustrating all at the same time. And I'm sure many of you will know exactly what I mean. Just before Christmas, I put a video out, which if you missed, you can watch it from the link just here, to update everyone where and how I'm getting on these days since my burnout and the videos that I made some time ago. And as always, there was this huge supportive response from everyone. So I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you. And in that video, I posed a question whether I should keep this channel running and if there was any benefit in doing so. And if so, what would you like to hear from me? And the one thing I hear a lot from people is asking me to share some of the coping mechanisms that I've talked about. So after a long night of pulling myself out of this paralyzing, overwhelmed state that I was in, I realized, hey, you know, this would be an ideal time to share some of the coping mechanisms that I used. So I want to talk to you about something called cognitive restructuring, and this is something that I learnt about with my cognitive behavior psychologist. And the idea behind it is simple. It is that if you can change your automatic thoughts, you'll be able to influence your emotions and your behaviors. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in my particular situation, when this anxiety hits as hard as it did like yesterday, it's because my head just becomes so overwhelmed with so many thoughts like, but I have to be doing this and I have to do that and I don't have time for this now and this person needs this. And then there's all this negativity. It's, you know, it's all going wrong. I'm going to fail. The situation is getting worse. You know, literally my brain simply cannot keep up. And I have these really strong emotional responses and physical response. In my case, the emotional response is fear. And the physical response is my body tightens up in so much pain and I feel like I'm going to pass out. Now, cognitive restructuring is a great way for us to reframe our negative thoughts. And actually, I've been using this process a lot in advance of doing something that might make me anxious as a type of preparation. And I guess a good example of this is recently I did public speaking for the first time in many years. And although I was confident about what I wanted to say, I had lots of those kind of niggling negative thoughts in advance. And cognitive restructuring is a process that helps you identify those automatic negative thoughts that you might have and identify any distortions you might have about those thoughts, such as, am I disqualifying the positive things or am I magnifying the thought? To determining whether or not the thoughts are true and what evidence there is to support them, and then finally replacing them with positive and accurate thoughts. So this all makes sense when you have time to prepare for something like I did with my public speaking, but How is it helping me when I'm in the middle of a full-on panic attack? Well, the truth is it doesn't at first. After recognizing that I'm having a panic attack, I need to do all the things to bring me back down to a calmer place to start with. And the first thing, and I guess always the hardest thing for me, is just accepting the situation is what it is. I kind of have to say to myself, hands up, Greg, you're in the situation, the world can go on without you for a while, but right now you need to put yourself first. This situation may not be ideal, it may not work in with your plans today, but if you do not do this, the consequences are much worse, and you've been there and you've done that, and you don't want to end up back there again. So generally this begins to settle my brain, and of course my brain is still trying to pop in many thoughts, but I simply acknowledge the thought and then let it go for that moment. And in doing so, I find that I'm no longer fueling the anxiety of these thoughts, and eventually my head really starts to quieten down, which is great because it gives me the opportunity to concentrate on my breathing, taking those deep breaths in and letting them out slowly, and listening to my breath, and then of course really taking notice of all the, the sensations that are going through my body. And in yesterday's case, I also changed my temperature. As I said, it was a cold day outside, and I was actually cold, but I was uncontrollably sweating. So at one point, I managed to drag myself under a warm shower just to change my temperature and just to sit on the floor and feel that sort of warm water flowing over my skin. And after all of this, just because it was so bad yesterday, I actually got into this state where I just fell asleep for several hours. And although this was really inconvenient to my plans, I just had to listen to what my body was saying and let it do what it felt was best. Now, when I woke up, my brain was like instantly right back on it, but knowing my routine, I was prepared for this. And this is where I find that this cognitive restructuring process really helps me out. And so near me, I had a notebook and a pen, and as I had all these negative thoughts that were racing through my head, I just simply, wrote them down to free up space in my head. And I found myself saying, okay, you've written that down now, you can deal with that in a moment. But next to these thoughts, I also write down any distortions I might have. For example, as I've been doing this for some time now, I've become aware that I've made a lot of I should have statements. I should have done this, I should have done that. And I often disqualify either the positive things of the situation or that I have done, and I personalize it to becoming my own fault. So I make these distortion notes next to each of these negative thoughts. And I also like to write down how it made me feel, the emotional responses as well as the physical responses. And I find that this is super helpful to understanding, my situation in the future, because I'm informed and I'm able to say, hey, Greg, you're feeling this emotion because of that. And that is fine. That's your normal response. Don't now go making this into something bigger or something that it isn't and start worrying about that. It's kind of this process of elimination. I also dispute my comments, and what I mean by this is I find myself asking questions like, how accurate are your thoughts on this situation? Are your thoughts based on fact or are they based on feeling? And can you be misinterpreting these thoughts? And are you underestimating your ability to cope with this situation? And finally, what's the worst that could happen? Informing myself this way, I begin to realize that, hey, this is what triggered me. This is how I physically responded. This is how I emotionally responded. And these are the facts. And this gives me the capacity to say, okay, well, I can replace these negative thoughts with informed positive thoughts like, okay, the situation isn't perfect, but I am more than capable of doing this, and I can do some things to help improve the outcome. But in other cases, it's just, well, does any of this really matter? But once I've given the situation the time it needs, I can really pull myself through without spiraling again because I've lost time from doing what, I want to do or what I may believe is expected of me. And it's important to cherish that time for yourself. I find nowadays that I look back and I'm like, well, yeah, it happened and it's not great, but look what I've learned, and next time I can do this. Now, I would have to be honest and say this isn't the easiest skill to learn, and like anything, you become better with it with practice. But for me, coming out of an anxiety attack, particularly this one as bad as yesterday, I've experienced the effects lingering around for days, even weeks. And if I haven't really put all else aside and focused on this experience right now, I can tell you that it has really saved me on many occasions to bounce back much quicker than even, say, just a year ago. So I really hope that you found this process of cognitive restructuring that I use interesting and possibly useful to you. It's not a quick win in a situation, but it certainly, as I said, helps you get through the other side. Again, this is a process which I think is designed more for preparation, so it's probably worth discussing this with your therapist who can guide you better. I really just wanted to share how I kind of use that process in my case. Please do leave your comments about today's video and feel free to ask me any questions. I love getting your responses and I really do my best to respond as quickly as possible. So until next time, I wish you a healthy and safe recovery. And as always, I really recommend that you seek advice from a therapist or a trained medical professional if you have any of the symptoms that I've talked about here today. I'll see you next time.